Welcome everyone to chapter 13, The Field at the Knower. Uh, so, today we are going to discuss this chapter with Kabir and Nadine, as always. And Kabir, do you want to start uh, on your. Uh, looks like we touched upon this topic, which is the Purush and the Prakriti in the earlier chapters. Uh, but looks like this chapter deals in a little more detail about what these terms are. So if you can share with us your understanding.
Yes. Yeah, and not just once, but I think that has been a recurring theme throughout. We have been talking about consciousness and witnessing, the space of witnessing, and how phenomenality is changing, and there is something which is not changing. And this chapter is specifically focusing on this aspect. In sometimes it is referred as Gyan Yoga, in fact. Many people think Gyan Yoga means intellectual analysis, but it is that discernment. This whole chapter is about discerning between what is changing, what is phenomenal, and there is this aspect which is unchanging. And then it is hinting at how we can clarify who we really are. Are we the changing aspect? And if we are the changing aspect, then who is it that is witnessing this all changeful field? And that's why it is called Kshetragya Vibhagyo in Sanskrit. The Kshetra or the field is everything which is phenomenal. And it's not just the matter, but it also the thoughts, the feelings, anything which can be felt, which is experienced. And for many people, uh, that's all there is. If you ask a scientist or if you ask someone who has never really paid attention, they would say, what else is left? There is just field because the nervous system comes in that, and so-called experiencer uh, in the materialistic sense, even in neurological sense, is considered phenomenal. But the difference between materialistic point of view and the spiritual proposal is that there is an awareness of no matter what there is. Especially, I am reminded of how in quantum physics they see the role of observer and how that affects the observation, and they don't really uh, pinpoint what that really means. We don't really go all the way through when it from materialistic point of view. We just feel that maybe body and the brain and the sense organs are the observer. In this chapter, though, Krishna clarifies very, very clearly that no, that is still is all in the area of the field, the kshetra, the phenomenality. There is something which is non-phenomenal. There is something which is aware of even the subtlest of feelings or emotions or sensations. Sometimes there is no name for it even. They have not been catalogued. Nobody, we cannot communicate in words what we are feeling, but there is something which is aware of everything and anything in our experience, whether through our sense organs or within our bodies and minds. So this experiencer is what is referred as Kshetragya, or the Purush. For example, in Sankhya philosophy, Purush is the experiencer and Prakriti is the experienced. And then there is a suggestion by Krishna that if you want to evolve and find out your real nature and be free of suffering, realize that you are the Purush, you are the experiencer. And so you have more of a witnessing attitude towards Prakriti, towards the entire phenomenal realm, even within yourself, without yourself, within yourself, which is constantly changing. But pay attention, Arjun, what is not changing, and be there. And then you'll find me. That I believe is, you have probably started with the summary of chapters.
Yes. Yeah. Nadine, you want to add anything?
Wow, in this chapter somehow there were many points in what you just said, Kabir. Yeah, absolutely. Like I was also thinking, what is it actually that motivates us to go on that spiritual path? Why are we seeking to experience it? What are the motivators? A lot of people are seeking the path, I believe, because they don't want to suffer anymore and to understand how to get out of that. For myself, I also just felt I don't want to have repeated situations. I feel that in my life, some things are repeating in different disguises. It even makes you feel, oh no, but that's a different thing now. But actually, if you're looking truly at it, it's the same thing. So that's where I feel it's so important to find that space of the permanent, to actually step out of your recurring cycle of repeating the same thought patterns, the same actions. Even if you think you changed your environment in all that, there are basics still the same. I, for example, live 7,000 kilometers away from my family, but I still know and see now more and more how I'm still acting upon like in my space here as I am in my family environment. In a way, I can see parallels, even though there's such a huge distance in between. So I feel for myself like putting this down for me, why I'm trying to get into this consciousness, into that stage, because I want to break those patterns. Like, I think I want to break out of what is keeping me in a similar situation. Even if I change outer spaces, it still gives me similar feelings, and I want to expand it. I want to experience other things. And that's only possible if you're getting into that space, I think, and understand where this being space it is, and only that from that you can manifest through your body, through your sense organs, through your thoughts, like all of that. And what I have learned so far in my journey of finding that space of this permanence or that soul is, even if you understand those concepts we're talking about, Shiva Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti, and whatever you all want to call this concept or that understanding, as far as you only have the knowledge and understanding of it and not the awareness and the consciousness of it, it doesn't change anything. It's great to know something, but it doesn't change anything. So there's another step where you need to allow yourself and overcome your own limitations in, yeah, I understood it, but somehow I don't get there, So what is that space where you still get stuck in your old world, so to speak, in that world of the phenomenal stuff? And what I see for myself is a lot around really how the body is kind of a more neutral space in that phenomenal world than our mind. Because I think in this chapter about the knower and the field entails like your body, your thoughts, like everything what you also said, Kabir. And when I'm looking at my own journey, I feel when I'm entering into my inner body and I'm feeling myself and I'm really getting out of my mind, for me it's easier to then step really into that consciousness and to be in the now than to try to think my way out of thinking, So I feel the body is a very beautiful physical or phenomenal space that we are gifted with, and that offers such a beautiful space where you can find Krishna in yourself in a way. At least for me, I feel this is really a gateway in that sense. What Eckhart Tolle, he has a very beautiful meditation on that, like gateway to the inner body or something it's called. And
Yes.
listened to it a couple of times, and it's so simple, but that's the point, And I feel that a lot of spiritual seekers think it's very complex to find the consciousness in the self and understand the theories and the concepts behind it. But the point is, people who experienced it, they just try to give us these write-ups, to give us ideas and a space to understand it. But you don't need to dive into these words, how people try to explain it to you, because it's their language, it's their words. It's very simple to just go in that space. But we are so complex in our mind that we're not allowing ourselves that it can be so simple. I think this is where the entire secret of it lies in a way. And I can see for myself how often I'm struggling with making it again complex and difficult, and I can't manage it, and. And then when I'm having moments and I'm really just going inside my body and feeling myself and feeling what I am and like what all of this is, how I'm connected to everything, then I'm like, ah, then this feeling of, oh, okay, yeah, this is it, this just is it. Nothing more, nothing less. You're just there. And I feel this is what it is about and what he tries to describe in this chapter, that we get into that Noah space effortlessly, because that's what it is at the end of the day. What you said, Kabir, earlier with the rope, we're trying to learn and understand, and we really want to think our way into being and understand it and all of that. And this rope is getting tighter, tighter, tighter. And then you have these moments suddenly, I told that earlier also, a butterfly comes by, or you suddenly hear birds, or you suddenly feel your heartbeat, or you have a sensation on your skin. And then the rope just really releases. And then you're just there. And then I always think in these moments, oh my God, it's so simple. Like, why am I making it so complicated? Yeah. So maybe just that for me as the takeaway to, what Kabir said and what I felt when I read the chapter, what it is for me.
Yeah, for me, like as I was listening to both of you, there were some questions coming, and one is like, isn't there a paradox or irony where the knower, it says like the knower is same as the knowing, right? Like what we want to know is the same. Like the consciousness itself is the knowledge, and then if the knower itself is the knowledge, who is the doer, right? Is there a doer? And is there any, because it also talks about, the chapter talks about how uh, the purush doesn't do anything, right? Like purush is unchanging, that purush doesn't act basically. Purush is just experiencing what is happening. and and if the overall theme is that we are actually the purush, and we should identify with purush and not with the prakriti, uh, and then prakriti itself is more a manifestation of gunas, then are we the one who are acting? Is there an action which is happening where we are acting? Or, because when I say we, I'm referring to again the self with a capital S. So this chapter I think clearly says there is no action happening from the self. It is just experiencing. So are we doing anything on this path? Are we the ones who are trying to get into the state? Or is that just a manifestation of our gunas?
Yeah, wonderful questioning. I would like to use a metaphor to expand on this. But before I do that, I also want to say that there is a assumption, an inherent assumption, and I'm sure 99.999% of humanity can relate with this. But we make this common, very common, obvious error, which is the power of Maya. When we say, what are we doing? We almost separate ourselves from the consciousness, the Purush. We feel there is Purush, there is Prakriti, and there is I. What am I doing? As if we, I, we are anything outside of this. Yes, one thing. But let me take this metaphor, and I think that will clarify more clearly. I think some of you might have heard it from me, but I would like to repeat it. I think this is a very apt place. The metaphor of the television screen and what is being played on the screen. So if you see a blank television screen, right, imagine that to be the Purush. And whatever, when it is turned on and you select what is being played, and those same pixels, they take form of the pictures and the moving pictures and sound, so to speak, right? Or is going on, the play which is going on. Now, is whatever is being played is being called Prakriti. However, is it really different from Purush? If there is no screen, can there be Prakriti? Is what is being played on the screen different from this from what the screen is made of? The substance of the screen is the pixels, and those pixels light up and give an illusion that there is something else. Sometimes we are watching a show and somebody asks, "What are you watching?" And we'll say, "Watching a thriller, and it's really nice. I'm wondering what is going on." Hardly anybody would say, "I'm watching the screen," right? That's what we are doing. We are actually watching the screen, but we don't notice whatever is the underneath the permanent space, which is the screen. We don't value it. It is almost boring to the mind. Why give value? Why give attention to the screen? Whatever is going on, these pixels and the drama is so much interesting. It is creating emotions and cravings and aversions in us. So now, what taking this metaphor one step further, imagine you are the screen. You are the Purush, who you really are. Each one of us is that screen. And it is self aware. And it is, but by default, because of the power of Maya, the screen itself is identified with some characters which it is creating. That's why sometimes it is called the dream is going on and we identified with the character in the dream. That's exactly what happens when we sleep. I'm slipping another metaphor here. When we sleep and we are dreaming, we don't identify with all the characters in the dream. We identify with just one character. However, when we wake up, we realize that all those characters was nothing outside of me. My mind, it was all of this. The substance of all those characters and scenarios was my mind. And all of the dream and all of the characters and all of that time and space was me, if you consider your mind to be you. However, because of the power of ignorance and Maya, we were scared of the other characters or running away or interacting with them, assuming that I am just this one character. So we have this ability, consciousness has this ability to limit itself and identify with just one character and forget that it is everything. And awakening or enlightenment or realization is a process in which, even when during the dream is going on, you are aware that even though I'm experiencing it from the perspective of this one character, I am all of this at once. So in this case, screen never forgets that I am the screen. So screen doesn't become nervous depending on what characters are doing and what is going on. So it is more of a witness now. Now, when you talk about doer, so doer is just almost like a verb or an error or illusion created by Maya, where screen thinks it is one of the characters. And then it has a sense that I am the doer and I have to run and I have to save myself. And that ignorance, somehow, something, another character in a screen reminds the screen, hey, you are not this character, you are all of us. You are the Krishna, you are the screen. Come on. Don't forget that you are the screen. Don't be nervous, don't be anxious. This is just the play of forms. So screen becomes aware of its own nature. Purush becomes aware, I am the Purush, but yet the TV doesn't get turned off. The show is going on. The screen is still experiencing more from one of the characters, the aspects, than all the perspectives, right? That's the limitation of the form. But now it knows that it is more than all of this and it is beyond all of this, and yet it is not different from any of this. It is all of the phenomenal experiences put together, and yet the show can go on. Does it help?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who's the one who is trying to be aware of the consciousness, basically? Like, so that makes sense what you said, and and then there is no I, right? Practically, there is no you. But then when we talk about the spiritual journey itself, and then there is somebody who's trying to be aware of the Krishna inside. Uh, what is that basically? And is there a choice there then? Or is that just like a fruit which ripens without a choice? But it has to ripen and it will ripe eventually.
Very, very good questions. And all of these questions is what I think uh, experientially, I would say it took me years to understand, right? Because we can just talk about some concepts, but to really understand these can be like a path which may take years, really. But really, very good questions. I think a lot of people can relate with these. Yes. So, since there is nothing out there besides the screen, so anytime there will be a question who, there will be only one answer. The consciousness can't be known by anything else. So when we say who chooses to be aware, who chooses to pay attention to the consciousness, consciousness chooses to be aware, consciousness chooses to pay attention to consciousness. Who is aware of consciousness? Only consciousness can be aware of itself. And that is why the experience, if I may use that limited term for now, of becoming self realized is very, very unique. There is no object. That's why it hits us the first time we have this glimpse, because in all our experiencing throughout childhood, since childhood, throughout our lives, we are always aware of an object, initially focusing outside. And when we go on inner journey, we maybe bring our attention, like Nadine said, to the sensations in our body, the prana flowing in our body, the breath. But there is an object. Breath is the object, and whoever is something which is the subject. We don't know who is the subject. We call it I, that I am watching breath. But many times we don't clarify who is that I. Okay, I am watching breath. I am aware of the breath. I am aware of the sensation. I am aware of the entire body. Who is this I? And a moment may come as we go further in this journey where I become self aware. But it can't see it, it can't experience it in a subject object way. And that question, that who is aware of consciousness? And any scientist would also ask this question, because it is considered a basic default that if there is an experience, there has to be a subject, there has to be an object. When we are taught grammar, we are told there has to be a subject and there has to be an object. But this is something out of the world. That's what's for non-phenomenal, unique. And uh, my master gives a beautiful simile in that. He says that, okay, we were always looking through the glass, right? Imagine there is a glass and you are always looking through it and you are able to look at the objects. And someone, your guide, your master, replaces the glass with a mirror and you go come looking and you look at yourself for the first time. It hits you. You had never seen your face. Imagine. What is this? So the subject becomes self aware, but not in a subject object relationship. That's why all these genuine masters who are talking about the highest goal of a spiritual journey, they clarify that no matter if you meet with beings with 10 hands or you have the most spectacular experience, even more profound than that is could be a simple experience where the subject becomes aware of itself. Even when you have the most spectacular experience or beings from other dimensions come, there will be a subject experiencing the object. It is still a phenomenal experience. What they consider most profound is could be a very simple, sober experience. And sometimes in Zen, they talk about how such experiences happened when somebody was least aware and they were just taking a stroll, when they were shopping in a market, in a Upanishad. There was a beautiful, I don't remember which Upanishad it was, but they gave an example that how one guy who was figuring out his spiritual journey goes to the market to buy some meat. And here is a guy who was cutting different parts of this animal and selling. And he sells, give me the best part. And he says, ah, my meat, all parts are the best. And he was in the market, and this statement, which sounds like what is so profound about it, hits him that, oh, everything is the same. Yes. And so that I also realized that I was meditating in a room in a small places 15 hours a day, trying to be aware even during my sleep in the retreats. But there was this assumption that I'll have that experience. I will experience Nibbana. And that stopped it. And then There was another time when I had my open eyes and I was having a conversation with my open eyes, and camera was on, and I could get this reality. It clicks when you least expect it.
Right.
So Nadine can validate also. So to come back to the question, but I used your question to go into other aspects also, which is this is the play. Consciousness chooses to forget itself. Consciousness chooses to identify. Consciousness chooses to become from one to many, like the screen in the screen metaphor. Consciousness chooses to identify and become a doer and suffer. And then consciousness chooses to get tired of that suffering and come back to itself and be at peace.
But the chapter just says that it doesn't change, right? Like it is something which cannot change. Uh, and what you're describing feels like that it can be in two states, like for a lack of better words, that there's a state where it forgets and then there's a state where it knows. So is
Yes.
it that a
I mean, I will, yes, and again, very good question. And I would again continue with our metaphor. I think it's quite helpful here also. So see, at one perspective, screen never changes, no matter how big of a tragedy or a horror movie it is playing. No matter what is happening at the pixels level, would it be unfair to say that screen never changes? Now, maybe we assume sometimes the screen never changes, as in it is always blank. No, sometimes it would be blank, like in deep sleep. Sometimes it will have forms. Sometimes there'll be tragedy. Sometimes there'll be comedy and thriller and romance. But screen is never not really changing. And but screen, in this case, it's a self-aware screen. It is watching itself. Somehow, screen has this ability to forget that I'm the screen and to identify with the characters. And then it feels everything is changing, that it is the doer and it is being created and it is becoming old and it may die. And all the fear and suffering is there. And then somehow those pixels, the self aware pixels in our metaphor, right, become aware that, oh my God, we are not changing at all. So it's a way of putting it. It is changing from one perspective, but it's changing all the time. And that perspective is called Prakriti. Same screen, because it is changing, we are talking about that aspect, we say Prakriti. And that's what even in our conversation about Sankhya last week, we talked about how Prakriti uh, and Purush, and if you assume that is the reality throughout and don't talk beyond that, that is called Sankhya. But in Advait, it says actually Prakriti is not separate from Purush. Prakriti is also Purush, but it feels different. So it's usually difficult for people to take that leap at once. So to begin with, like in this chapter, we are first advised, if we are told Shashank and Nadine and Kabir are one, and all the money is one, and all the it's phenomenality. You are saying there is no differences. We our belief in our identity and separation and time and space is so strong. It's not our experience. We can't we can't catch that at once. So it helps to first separate the phenomenality from the non-phenomenal, the purush, and like keep our attention in the Purush. I think Nadine expanded more on the process and all those, uh, so many of these paths and ways which are available, like watching breath, becoming aware of inner body, keeping our attention within ourselves in different ways, which helps this separation where we can separate between what is changing and what is not changing. And then uh, at some point, when you are absolutely clear your consciousness, you intuitively know that actually, even what I thought Prakriti, a phenomenal world, is also me. It's not something out there and I'm the consciousness here. It is nothing but consciousness. That is the experience of Nibbana, the absolute, the final realization of Buddha.
Can I add one more dimension and think out loud? Because Shashank, your question was with that change, so that it's not changing, right? And then Kabir gave that example with the screen. And I feel, and again, here I felt a lot the limitation of words, because if we hear there is no change, then we think, because Kabir, when you gave this really amazing example, this metaphor, I guess at least I was thinking of a screen, you know, when you were talking, I was imagining how you narrated it. Like I saw a screen, a TV screen, I saw pixels, and I saw like stories playing, all of that. And then Shashank said that thing about, yeah, the screen and not change. And then I thought, oh, but if we say no change, it almost feels like I would always assume it's the same screen for everyone. But the point is, it isn't. Even the screen may change, but it's still the same screen in a way. I don't know how to say this right now, but it's like, you know, this oneness, why we are feeling connected with different things. It's expressing itself in different manners. And yes, the base is the same, but see, for example, my soul, maybe it was born 100 million times already, or maybe less, I don't know. But in each life that I'm materialized, I'm having a different expression, right? Like this, and even my consciousness may be in a way different, although it's the same. I don't know how to say this right now, but I feel even that word change is giving us such a rigid, you know, if we say there's no change in the screen, it feels like the screen would always be the same, but it's not. Like even the screen is reshaping, but it has it in its sense in a way. Like I don't know how to say it.
I think too, I might give a story I heard in on this, right, which I can share. I might mess it up, but anyway, so basically it's the gold basic example of gold and bangles.
Yes.
That
Yes.
there is gold, and if you kind of purify it and then convert it into different types of ornaments, uh, then the ornaments are different, but everything has the same gold, and you cannot differentiate between one gold and the other gold. And if you melt them again and purify them again, they might get some impurities on the way. But if you purify them, you won't be able to say that this bangle is different from this bangle because it's the same gold. Uh, so in that way,
Absolutely.
that consciousness we are talking about is same amongst
Absolutely.
all of us. There is no different consciousness between you and me.
Yeah, this is a beautiful example where, like you yourself clarified, there is something which is not changing, but there is something which is always changing. So this gold is always changing the forms, but essentially it never changes.
I think where I'm stuck still is like,
Exactly.
is there a choice? And I think it's probably not like relevant because this is something which there's never been a good answer on free will and destiny. But my question is more around, if the consciousness itself is not aware and that is the only source of real, like, where let's say there is, if there is a like knowledge, all the knowledge is in consciousness itself, and only that has the wisdom to actually kind of be aware, uh, and that is anyway same, and there is no identity either way. uh, who makes the choice to work on the spiritual path? And then what I mean by who, I understand it's the consciousness itself then looks like. And then if it's the same, is there any independent choice? It's like when the water flows to a ocean, you don't see that as a choice of the water droplet, right? It just does that. And then there is no difference between the water in the river and the water in the ocean uh, when it mixes, right? And then it's just happening, right? Like there is no choice involved. So and then similarly for a fruit, when it comes on a tree, it will come and it'll ripe and it'll go through the whole cycle again in some way or the other. It'll go to the earth, and so it makes me feel that there is no choice. Like even though we do identify with our own identity, and we think that we are taking these choices. This is true, nothing like your part, right? Which you were talking about. Like it's very simple. We just have to identify with our consciousness. I was saying, like, who is that, right? Like, is it when you say simple or hard? Does it matter really? Like, is it like as stupid as a river, like a droplet thinking that, oh, I need to go to the ocean and the path is so hard? Like, yeah, like you don't have a choice and you are going there anyways. But you can identify, if you think you are the one who's actually traveling on this path, then you will feel that it's a hard thing to do, to go from a mountain all the way down to an ocean. But if somebody who's looking from a distance, they might be able to conclude there is no doer in this. There is just drama playing out. But that is where I'm still like not able to really connect.
Yes,
That's
I think again, very profound, and I think anybody who's very sharp intellectually will come to these points. So it's glad we are covering, and I missed this part from your previous question, and I'm glad you brought it up and expanded on it also. So, like our uh, metaphor of screen, and we talked about there it can be seen from two perspectives. It is changing and yet not changing, right? If you see from the perspective of screen, nothing really changed. If you see it from the perspective of what is playing on the screen, it is constantly changing. It's bit like that. Free will and destiny is from one perspective, you always have a choice and you are making choices every day. We are have these apparent choices every day, to have this session, to have tea or coffee, to go here or there, to sleep or to work. And from that perspective, as long as we see ourselves as a person, and a person using intellect to make decisions, we can't help but make a choice. Even not making choice would be a choice. Yes. So from that perspective, there are choices being made, and all the genuine guides on a spiritual journey, they always emphatically said, Buddha always talked about it. He said, hey, you can choose. And he also gave example of some seekers. He said, I met him 3 times. If he had made that choice the first time I met him, he would be free already. The second time I met him 5 years back, he still had a choice. He didn't make that choice. And now this is, another opportunity. If he doesn't make this choice now, he'll have to wait till next time life, right? So if you hear just that part, you might feel, let's see, he's talking about the choice. And same Buddha, when he talks about the other perspective, that nothing changes in the screen at the consciousness level, everything is fine and doesn't really matter. Consciousness is consciousness, whether it realizes or not realizes that it is the screen. Screen will be screen, whether it is aware or not aware. So it's not like something else has come into existence outside of the screen. Yes. So from that perspective, he always says everything is fine and kind things are sort of destined, and screen chooses to forget itself and to be lost, and it is displayed, and it's called Maya of the God, where God forgets himself, multiplies himself, and wants to suffer and wants to wake up. And so from the perspective of consciousness, it is all destined, and one can argue intellectually that, okay, so when we are making that choice to wake up, maybe that is what is destined. Destiny is making us choose that, uh, make that choice. Now, one mistake which as intellectuals we do is, when we are operating at one level, we kind of use the laws of physics from another level. Let's say there are different dimensions. If we are working at a three-dimensional world, our experiencing and decision making and everything, and theoretically we understand a four dimension, and just because we theoretically understand four dimensions, we think that, okay, at the level of four dimension, nothing has to be done at the three dimension, so let me not do anything. But we don't realize, no, if you are in a three-dimension world, you are driven by these laws. So a simple answer, for which is more actionable, maybe not intellectually fully satisfying, but a more actionable, is that you, right now, we think we are individuals. Our experience is suffering. We want to get rid of suffering. So you have a choice. You have to make that choice. And even if this choice you will be able to make that choice, even if it's a destiny, right? You don't worry about that, right? If you are tired of suffering and you want to find the way out of suffering, whether it's destined or not, you have to make that choice. You have to choose to not suffer. I know it's not a great answer to the intellectually, but that is the best which I have found any even the greatest masters have been able to put, because they also say that the answer of these questions you will get it when you are at this space beyond space and time, but you can't communicate in the realm of space and time. It falls in that category.
Yeah. Yes. I think we could to talk about a few words which are mentioned just for viewers who uh, like. So I'll read it out. The field Arjuna is made up of following the 5 areas of sense perception. I think these are obvious, like the 5 areas of sense perception, the 5 elements. So these would be the 5 elements uh, which are discussed.
The fire, water, space, and so on. Air, yes.
So the five sense organs. I'm assuming these are same as the 5 areas of sense perception, one for each, and the 5 organs of action. Do you know what, Kabir, this is the organs of action?
Yeah, I mean it's nothing. It's pretty obvious. They talk when they talk about organs of action. It's hands, your arms, your legs, your mouth, your nose. Yeah, again, because this is how you are acting out in the world. Yeah, responding to the world outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
The three components of the mind. I think this one was interesting. Manas, Buddhi, and Ahamkara.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk about these three. Differentiate between, like, my understanding is Manas is the memory, which is not just limited to our brain, but to, like, every cell has a memory and the whole body has a memory. And I'm assuming there is some memory outside physical also, because we're able to carry these memories without the body. But I don't know if it's referring to that. And then Buddhi is probably intellect, and Amkara feels like the identity. But I'd love to hear from you, like, any subtle differences between
Sure.
specifically Amkara and intellect.
Sure. And my understanding is that manas or mind is more than just the memory. It's like even, you know, how the noise, the voice in the head, the random thoughts flowing, even different feelings that we experience is part of this mind. When we are not consciously making any decisions, you see a lot of activity going on, different low feelings and a feeling of lightness or heaviness. I want to add feelings to it, and the memories and the imaginations and uh, the random thoughts or noises, all of that put together is considered mind. And when we talk about buddhi or intellect, it is in the larger mind, uh, for the lack of better word, right? There is when we consciously discern, uh, who discerns, again the consciousness has that ability to consciously discern. So you can say intellect is a more focused mind in action, where you are, for example, this whole chapter is about discerning between what is changing and what is not. Or if somebody asks a question, who are you really? And you say, okay, am I my hand? If I chop my hand, will I disappear? Am I this body? If I change this body, will I disappear? Am I my memory, my autobiography? Okay, let me try to ignore it. If it is gone, have I gone? I don't. I'm still here, without my arms, without my memories. Oh my God, it seems like I'm more than these. So this is what is happening at the level of intellect. So uh, for the convenience of understanding or differentiating, uh, because in the spiritual path they are not put at the same level. The random thoughts and mood swings and this discernment is not put at the same level. It has always been advised that let your buddhi guide your mind, your manas, right? And they compare manas or mind to a monkey jumping here, there, everywhere. When we meditate, we try to watch breath. Our intellect has decided to watch breath for 10 minutes, but mind has a different agenda. It says, oh, let's think about lunch, let's think about our relationship or those issues. So manas and buddhi, you can see, and that's why people feel split within that. Why? I decided to watch my breath. What the hell is going on? And then these concepts help where you are told, yes, you right now as intellect decided this, but your mind is different. It has a different agenda of its own. And then beautifully, I think even I was struck by this many times in many spiritual texts, they stop at this differentiation. And here, for I think for better understanding, they have introduced another layer called ahankar or the autobiography. Autobiography is a more accurate translation in English, I believe, of ego than anything else. The sense that I am this body mind with certain story, my autobiography. And you see, we are rarely aware that we are thinking of this autobiography, that I am so and so. It has become such a default, but when neurology works on it, neurologists in fact have talked about this. They have studied brain of people who get some disease and the autobiography disappears, and they study brain of people where so-called normal people, when this autobiography is active, they are saying that such a huge portion of brain is lighting up to keep this background context that Nadine is doing this, Kabir is doing this, Shashank is doing this. Autobiography is taking up so much effort at the level of brain, and it seems to be happening unconsciously. We don't wake up and decide, okay, autobiography turned on. It is turned on. In fact, we seem to have make. It seems that it takes a lot of effort to drop it off, to ignore that aspects in our meditations, mindfulness journey, and we have done those meditations, three of us, how we try not to pay attention to it, and it does make a difference. It does then settles down kind of when we are not paying attention. So in this particular chapter, Krishna is kind enough to Arjun to remind him that it's not just the intellect and the changing mind. You always have this assumption, like I said, when even when I was meditating for 12 hours, 15 hours, I never noticed this autobiography. I never questioned who is saying that I have to meditate, that I have to become enlightened. That was the default, that of course I am doing it, such an obvious thing. And even Buddha beautifully in his teaching, he talks about, when he talks about steps, sort of steps in our evolutionary journey, in our realization, so to speak, the first step he talks about is impermanence, anicca. He says, he doesn't even question who you are. Fine, you are Shashank, you are Nadine. Okay, I come to Buddha and say, I'm Shashank. I'm suffering? What do I do? He says, yeah, yes, Shashank. No questions raised about Shashank yet. He said, become aware of what, see, everything is changing outside of you, even so called inside of you, in the body, in the mind, in the feeling. See, everything is changing. And you are just trying to hold on to things, but they are changing anyways. Isn't that causing you suffering when you resist this change? When something pleasant is going, you are resisting, it's painful. When something painful is coming and you don't want it, it's painful. See, it's happening anyways. And is it possible to not resist? Why don't you watch breath? Why don't you learn to be more of a witness? So he focuses on developing this aspect of wisdom, that notice the change, notice the impermanence. At some point during this journey, when through this discernment, cravings and aversion reduce, and this big uh, turmoil in the ocean, this big wave settle down a little, at that point, uh, our teacher, our guide, subtly points out, he says, yes, you are watching all this change, but who are you? Who are you? Now he's pointing out that ahankar aspect. He said it's not just intellect and mind, there is something else which you assume you are observing, but who are you? I'm Shashank. And he said, okay, slow down, slow down. Let's drop the autobiography, now what is left, and so on. So then he called this aspect anatta. He said there is no identity. It was again the play of Maya, ignorance, which made us, which confused us in believing that there is a separate I, an identity, doing something. Even that is a phenomena. Even that is a phenomena, just like your manas, your ahankar is also phenomena. And so then you said, then who is doing it? And who is doing it? And he says, good question. Be with that question. You ask that question, who is doing it? What is going on? He says, that's a very good question. Don't drop it. Because when you look inside in your discernment, in your mindfulness, you'll not find anyone. The answer of that journey, the journey is started by an individual, but it is like that drop getting into the ocean and disappearing. But when the answer comes, there is nobody there to receive that answer. The identity disappears in finding the answer of that question. Who is doing it? Who am I? Who am I? And the answer is not conceptual. You can't give it. You can't even say, I'm consciousness. Then it's a conceptual answer. But you, the one who is looking, has disappeared, and you say, wow, there is just life, right? And so, second aspect is anatta, where you realize that even this ahankar is being created, is phenomenal. It's nothing real out there. It is also part of some pixels on the screen. And then the third aspect Buddha said is how if there is identity in any form operating in this pixels, thinking anything, the result is dissatisfaction. In this realm of changing pixels, there can never be satisfaction. That is what he called dukkha. People think it was suffering. No, he just called that this because it is in a flux, constant flux, and there is no identity really. Anybody confusing themselves to be an identity or having craving aversions or want this change not to happen in any way, trying to block it, the result would be dissatisfaction. There's constant dissatisfaction even when there is so-called pleasure in this realm, even that is dissatisfactory because it's already going. You are having an orgasm, it is already passing. You are having a blissful experience, it is already passing. Because it's always in a flux, it cannot satisfy you. So anicca, anatta, dukkha, impermanence, no self, and dissatisfaction are the features of this pixels changing, of this phenomenality. And then he said, if you have become aware of this, just aware of this, and you know there is no individual aware of this, there is just awareness of it. There is just this verb called awareness of it, right? At that point, uh, new sanskaras, new karmas stop forming, the old ones start burning away, and screen becomes aware of its screen that, oh, I have always been screen. Oh my God, why was I so confused? Why did I start thinking I was pixels? I've always been this game. What is new about it? But I knew it at some level already. So this is the journey. And I think by introducing these terms, Krishna is helping Arjun pay attention that there is something called ahankara, the autobiography, even though you're not aware of it.
Yeah, good. So it was very beautiful actually. So I'm actually is there anything Nadine, on your side, anything you want to talk about in the chapter? Any questions you might have for Kabir?
Hmm?
Yeah.
No, I'm just processing what
Yeah, me too. Me too. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, we can come to an end. I think that was really beautiful what Kabir shared right now. I think that can just settle down now.
yeah, I think that's the knowledge the chapter is talking about. And as we walk on this path, hopefully it becomes more intuitive and more at a level of knowing rather than at the level of intellect. And with that wish, we'll leave our viewers and we'll see all of you again in chapter 14.
Thank you so much, Shashank, Nadine.
Thank you.